The year was 1992, and the big story in Colorado's GLBT community was a proposed amendment to the state constitution that would prohibit individuals from suing any city or municipality for discrimination based on sexual orientation. Amendment 2 became a lightning rod for gay rights advocates and their opponents, and words like Colorado for Family Values, Colorado Legal Initiatives Project, and hate state entered the lexicon. Flash forward now 14 years, and gay and lesbian issues of great importance to both conservative and progressive voters are once again making the headlines. With me tonight are two very knowledgeable people in the area of Colorado politics. Adam Crowley is a native of Grand Junction, Colorado, who has worked on political campaigns and with organizations across the country. Most recently, Adam was on staff with Jeff Cook for Congress in Westchester, New York. He returned to his home state in May and joined Coloradans for Fairness as the statewide outreach director. Pat Stedman is an attorney and partner in the Denver-based lobbying firm of Mendez, Stedman and Associates. He represents the LGBT lobbying group Equal Rights Colorado. He helped write Referendum I and lobbied for it to appear on the November ballot. Welcome to both of you to Colorado Outspoken.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you guys here. You know, the issue of domestic partnership within Colorado, and specifically the ballot initiative Referendum I, has really come to the public consciousness through a very visible media campaign. We've seen the television ads all summer, and these ads are really the result of the efforts of Coloradans for Fairness. And so I want to start with a question for you, Adam.
Sure.
How did Coloradans for Fairness come about as an organization and get involved in this issue and with these advertisements?
Sure. Well, the state legislature actually passed referendum, the HB 1344, which is now titled Referendum I, and the organization behind that became Coloradans for Fairness, which is a political campaign, and we are an issue campaign focused primarily on passing Referendum I. And it started off with a bipartisan group of legislators and people who felt that this was an important issue, and they worked to get that passed to the legislature to offer it to the voters of the state of Colorado, which is a historic move. And actually Pat was very involved with that from the beginning, so he can tell you a little bit more about that.
Okay, and I wanted to go to you, Pat, next with that very question. How did Referendum I come about in the first place, and how did it end up on the ballot? Like, why now? Why this election year?
Well, one of the reasons we asked the legislature to put this issue before voters is that we knew there would be this constitutional amendment out there to ban gay marriage, and it's now going to appear on our ballot as Amendment 43. And of course I'm voting no on it, and I'd ask other people to vote no, but we knew that Amendment 43, banning gay marriage in the Constitution, was going to come before voters. And it seemed to the group I work with like this is really asking voters the wrong question. It's just asking voters, should we exclude gay people? Should we write them out of the Constitution? It's not asking them, what do we do with gay couples? And so having some countermeasure, some counter proposal, that instead of just excluding people and saying no, but rather saying this is what we can do to provide access to basic legal rights for committed same-sex couples, that was a more meaningful question. And it's something for voters in other states across the country that have approved amendments banning gay marriage. It's a question they never got asked. All they ever had in front of them was a question about excluding gay people. They never were asked, can we fit gay people in over here? Can we change our laws in this way without creating gay marriage, but creating sort of a parallel system to provide access to basic rights for them?
Exactly. I was going to say that sort of negativity harkens back to Amendment 2, where you're writing a segment of the population out.
That's
of
right.
Rights that are shared by everyone else.
That's right. And this is really historic, as Adam was saying. You know, every other state that's voted on this has passed these bans on gay marriage, but that's the only thing they were asked. Colorado voters will be the first in the nation, the first in history, to ever be asked to create domestic partnerships and recognition for same-sex couples through a vote of the people. There are a couple other states that have laws like this. States like Vermont that has civil unions, and Connecticut now has civil unions as well. In California, they have a domestic partnership system that's very comprehensive and very similar to Referendum I. But those were all created in their legislatures. No state has ever put this question on the ballot. We're going to be the first.
And coming from the state that produced Amendment 2, it might be seen as somewhat ironic or substantial that if that is also a state that votes for legalized domestic partnerships, I would think.
We've come a long way, perhaps.
See, we have. But we could talk very briefly a little bit about Amendment 43, which is that countermeasure which is on the ballot also, which states that the state's constitution will be altered to state that only the union of one man and one woman, you know, I've always wondered who that one man and one woman were, lucky stiffs, would constitute a marriage within the state of Colorado. And but the question comes up in my mind, isn't gay marriage already illegal in Colorado? I mean, why do they need to amend the Constitution to say the same thing?
Actually, you're exactly right, Tom. Under current state law, we already ban same-sex marriage. We already have a law in Colorado that says marriage is one man and one woman. Amendment 43 is completely unnecessary.
Right. And Adam, going back to the idea of the organization Coloradans for Fairness, you know, it's too bad. It's kind of too bad we didn't have a representative here, someone who is promoting Amendment 43, so that they could maybe explain to us why its supporters want so desperately to keep same-sex couples from experiencing equal rights, privileges, and responsibilities. And I'm quoting the text from Referendum I. Why it's so important to them that that something like domestic partnerships not come in.
Right. And I wish they were here too. I'd love to speak to those people about why they feel it's important. And you know, I do think there are people out there who they don't understand the issue. They may not even understand that gay people exist, or that gay couples exist and gay families exist. And that's what makes Referendum I even that much more important, is that it is a reality for many couples across the state of Colorado that don't have these legal protections. But these people who are proponents of 43, I think they live in another universe. They don't understand that that the reality is very different. And so they are doing what they feel is a sincere effort for this something that's alleged attack on their institution of marriage. But the reality is that the amendment is unnecessary. Referendum I does nothing to attack the institution of marriage whatsoever, and really committed couples are no threat to their commitment whatsoever, and that the state really should support commitment. Commitment is commitment, and that's what the message we're trying to send to Colorado voters.
Well, commitment is responsibility, and it seems to be one
Absolutely.
of the touchstones of what the more conservative forces would like everyone to be more responsible. But coming back to what Referendum I, actually says, and as one of the writers of Referendum I, I'll get it right, Pat, I was struck reading the document that this very pro-gay piece of legislature actually cites the fact that marriage is the union of one man and one woman. Actually, within Referendum I, they said it 2 or 3 or 4 times, as if almost to say that no, this is not marriage. This is something else. Do you know why that sentiment is included in that issue as much as it is? Why it was necessary to include it?
Actually, that's a very important point about the domestic partnership system that Referendum I would create. They're not the same as marriage. And the legislature, you're right, went to great lengths to say this is not a marriage. It doesn't change our state marriage laws. What it does is it creates a way to recognize gay couples. They would take out a license from their county clerk's office, fill out an application, pay a fee, all very similar to going down for a marriage license. And yet it would give them a domestic partnership license, and it would enable them to have access to the state laws that provide benefits and protections and responsibilities to married couples. What it does is it makes all of the laws that we already have on the books today, things like child support, inheritance, health care, workers' compensation, it makes all of these laws applicable to same-sex couples in the same way that they apply to married couples today. One of the interesting things about Referendum I is that it's really not creating a lot of new law. The only thing in Referendum I that's really new is this domestic partnership license. But once you get that license, we're taking existing laws and making them applicable to same-sex couples. So it doesn't rewrite family law or adoption law or child support. It doesn't rewrite the probate code and make special provisions for gay couples. All those laws stay in just as they are today. They're simply made applicable to gay couples so that they provide the same benefits, the same protections, the same set of rules that married couples play by.
Could it be that the language that this is not a marriage was put so often into referendum I to assuage or placate or calm some of the fears of people who think that perhaps it's an attempt to get gay marriage in Colorado through the door?
That's absolutely true. And realize, you know, referendum I came about through a political process. Our state legislature, through a bipartisan majority of our legislature, put this on the ballot. And you know, legislators try to stay somewhere near the middle of the road. That's part of the nature of the political system, and how you put together a majority of votes in a legislative body is by, you know, veering a course as straight down the middle of the road as you can, and saying, we're not changing marriage law, we're not authorizing gay marriage, but we're solving a lot of problems that gay people have because they cannot marry. We're creating a parallel track that gives gay people access to these same benefits and protections, so that they play by the same sets of rules that married couples will play by without changing marriage law. That was a very pragmatic, centrist, kind of common sense way to actually sort of sidestep some of the controversy in the gay marriage debate. You know, if the bill before the legislature this year would have been to legalize gay marriage, it wouldn't have passed. Right. Saying that domestic partnerships are not marriage and that we're not touching marriage law, but we can solve these problems and provide access to basic legal rights and fairness for people on this parallel track called domestic partnerships. That's something that did pass the legislature with a nice, strong bipartisan majority.
Right, and I think that the fact that it is the product of a bipartisan partnership within the state. It's not simply one party or the other trying to change the law to offend a particularly huge number of people, so that it actually comes from a wide spectrum of political ideology. That this is a good idea. Is this a good idea for the state? Does it make sense for Colorado to have this? Does the state benefit
absolutely
from people entering into domestic partnerships
Sure.
rather than staying single?
This referendum I is all about allowing committed same-sex couples to legally, in the eyes of the law, bind themselves to their commitments. And the kinds of commitments we're talking about are things like child support. Under current law today, same-sex couples can only adopt as single people. And so that you've got one person who's a legal parent for that child, and the other person who's mommy's roommate, who could walk away tomorrow and not owe child support. And how is that in the best interest of children? How is that in the best interest of taxpayers? If we allow people to make a commitment to start a family together, let's go to the adoption agency, let's go to the sperm bank, and yet we don't bind both of those people to that commitment to that child, and we don't have a legally enforceable mechanism for making both of those people pay child support if something happens to their relationship down the road and one of them, you know, wants to leave and split up. And all of a sudden, in the law, we've got a single parent with no other person that we can hold responsible for, you know, helping pay for that kid's education or health care or what have you.
Right. Again, leveling the playing field and engendering that sense of responsibility in all citizens. I think, yeah, that sounds pretty important. And Adam, did you want to add anything?
Well, just the idea of personal responsibility is really important, and I think that resonates with a lot of Colorado voters, especially the conservative element in our state. I know a lot of people that I work with are Republicans and conservative in their political ideology, but they understand the concept of personal responsibility. They understand the concept of commitment. Mm-hmm. They understand that it's important to hold people responsible to those commitments. And so when you explain the things that we're going to happen when referendum I passes, this creation of domestic partnerships, that we do enforce responsibility, they like that.
It's going to be difficult for them to argue against what they're always touting. It's like, don't vote for this because it's touting responsibility.
Sure. Right. Who can argue with that?
Exactly.
That's the thing.
Okay, one last question that I wanted to throw to you, optimistic gentlemen here, regarding the passage of referendum I, is that I want you to, if you can, envision the post-election and referendum I has passed or has failed. What can we look forward to? How do you visualize the quality of life for LGBT people post-election 2006? And we can start with Adam. And
sure. Well, I just think that this is it's an important victory for us as members of the state of Colorado, really, not just as a GLBT community, but everybody that we've been able to, through the election process, been able to go to the voters and say, let's create fairness for all citizens. And I think that gives me a lot of hope for the future, that the fair-minded citizens of Colorado can do something so great, so historic, that you know, whenever there's an issue that comes up, you know, we can trust the voters to make the right decision, and we're entrusting them to make this right decision.
Okay. And Pat, your vision of
well, I'm very optimistic that Referendum I will be approved by voters. You know, all signs look good, and as I said, this is purposely put together as a real common sense package that goes right down the middle of the road. It doesn't change our marriage laws, but it provides access to legal rights for people who today don't have them. You know, the Referendum I provides protections that you can't get in a lawyer's office by making out wills and powers of attorneys and contracts. Referendum I provides greater economic security for children and for people in, you know, whether you're dealing with inheritance or hospital visitation or end-of-life decisions, organ and tissue donation, burial and cremation. The list goes on and on. I think there's a lot to fight for in Referendum I that will really improve the lives of same-sex couples in Colorado and make us a model for the nation of how to not just have this scapegoating, polarizing fight about gay marriage, and instead talk about how we really protect families and protect children.
Right. Well, I'm afraid that for purposes of our discussion, we're going to have to leave it right there. But that definitely is not the end of this issue. I want to encourage all of our viewers to exercise their right to vote on these measures in November. I want to thank my two guests, Pat Stedman and Adam Crowley, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.